They called it a wellness stipend, but what Trevor did was cut my grocery budget in half and hand me a printed spreadsheet like I should be grateful for the vitamins he'd chosen. I learned this at the self-checkout, with a line of neighbors behind me and a cashier young enough to be my granddaughter, trying not to look at the screen where my card kept flashing declined. "It's okay, Mrs. Bell," she whispered, cheeks pink with embarrassment on my behalf. It wasn't okay. The lemons, the oatmeal, the bag of lentils I always buy, the denture cream, none of it went through. Then Trevor's voice floated across the aisle, cheerful and too loud. "Mom's budgeting is under review," he announced to no one and everyone. "We're streamlining." Claire, my daughter, stood beside him with her arms crossed, eyes sliding over me like I was a stranger who ate too much bran. "Don't make a scene," she said without moving her lips, as if I'd planned some performance. I felt the first pinch of humiliation where it always starts with me, in the muscles behind my knees, the body remembering what it's like to stand too long while being made small. I'm Nora. I'm 69. I used to work as a hospital billing clerk, which is a fancy way of saying I spent 30 years seeing what numbers can do to people's dignity. I stacked codes and checked signatures and explained deductibles to families who couldn't hear through their panic. That job made me careful, maybe fussy, definitely boring. It also made me good at noticing when math doesn't add up. So when my card finally worked after the cashier removed the two most expensive items, the multivitamins Trevor had insisted on and the collagen powder I never asked for, I looked at the receipt like it was a message from the past. Several lines down, in block letters, was Kindred Wellness Prime, $1,249. 00 recurring. I felt my mouth go dry. I had never signed up for anything Prime in my life, and certainly not at that price. "Must be one of her subscriptions," Trevor told the cashier, smile fixed, hand on my shoulder like a benevolent son. "Older people click things. It happens." The cashier's eyes darted to me. "Would you like to take the receipt, Mrs. Bell?" She slipped it into my palm in a way that felt like a secret handshake. Beside the main strip, she'd stapled a smaller copy, the Kindred charge highlighted in yellow. Outside, the wind off the river cut through my sweater. Trevor took my bags as if his help were proof of kindness. "We'll handle all your payments going forward, simpler for everyone," he said. Claire nodded once. "You've been so overwhelmed since Dad, Mom. Let us carry it." The word carry lodged like a fishbone. My husband, Walt, had been dead 5 months. He'd been a machinist at the plastics plant until the factory closed, then a custodian at the community college. He taught himself to repair watches for fun. I knew every corner of our small life, every line in our checkbook. That was my invisible work, the service no one applauded. The week after his funeral, Trevor had offered to help with online banking, since the letters from Social Security and the union pension plan looked confusing. I let him, not because I can't manage numbers, but because grief makes you misplace your confidence on the kitchen counter and forget it under a stack of condolence cards. That evening, after they dropped me at my apartment with the multivitamins and less food than I'd paid for, my phone buzzed. It was Margot from the credit union, a woman with sensible shoes and a memory like a steel trap who'd known me since I opened my account 19 years ago. "Nora," she said, gentle but firm. "I'm calling because I saw a request come through for a representative payee appointment on your Social Security. That usually comes from you. This one's from a Trevor H. as your caregiver." I stared at the yellow highlight on the receipt as if it could speak. "I didn't request that, Margot," I said. She exhaled. "I didn't think so. Why don't you come in tomorrow? Bring any paperwork you've signed lately. We'll have a look." My knees did that trembling thing again. "Thank you," I whispered. "One more thing," she added carefully. "There are monthly withdrawals labeled Kindred Wellness LLC, looks like supplements. The shipping address isn't yours." I set the phone down on the counter very carefully, like it could explode. I stood in my tidy kitchen listening to the refrigerator hum and realized the humiliation at the grocery store had been an opening act. And now I had a copy of the program. I pulled out my old file box and found the folder where I keep powers of attorney and beneficiary forms. When I slid it open, a document I didn't recognize winked up at me: Family Care Agreement, Dependent Services Plan. My signature stared back, but the date was last month and my pen hadn't touched paper that day. I turned the page and felt cold travel down my back. The clause said, "In consideration for care provided, client authorizes caregiver to manage budgets and select wellness partners." At the bottom, someone had stapled a kind root brochure. There was a coffee stain in the corner. Walt used to tease me that coffee stains tell more truth than signatures. As I lifted the brochure, another slip of paper fluttered to the floor, a receipt for a package delivered to C. Hartwell, Unit 3B, Claire's address across town. I picked it up with shaking fingers and smiled without meaning to. Maybe I wasn't as alone in this as they hoped. When I turned off the kitchen light, a shadow moved under my door. Then I heard a soft knock and a whisper I recognized. "Mrs. B?" It was Luis, the night concierge who'd carried my groceries 100 times. He slid a small envelope under the door. Inside was a printout from our security camera, Trevor entering my apartment at noon 2 Tuesdays ago when I'd been at the clinic for my blood pressure check. Under the still image, Luis had written in neat block letters, "He left with a white folder." My folder. I held the photo and the yellow highlighted receipt in both hands like two ends of a rope. The room felt very, very quiet. And then I knew what I had to do. Humiliation comes in chapters. The next one was the family group chat Claire created after Walt died, where she posted updates about me as if I were a community project. "Mom needs boundaries with tech," Claire wrote after the grocery incident, attaching a smiling selfie of herself and Trevor in their matching athleisure. "We're stepping in more aggressively for her safety." Cousin Amy replied with a string of hearts. My sister Ruth, who lives 3 hours away and loves a good audience, chimed in. "So proud of you for taking this on." Nora always hated asking for help. I typed and erased messages all afternoon. My body learned a new kind of tired, the kind that comes from swallowing words. At the credit union, Margot shut her office door and slid a stack of statements toward me like she was handing over x-rays. "Look here," she said, tapping dates. "A new joint checking account appeared 3 months ago, your name and Claire's. The signature card shows an online authorization, which could be legitimate if you clicked, but..." She looked up at me over her glasses. "I didn't," I said. She nodded, lips thinning. "There's also a debit card linked to it that's been used for cash advances at an ATM near a yoga studio in Eastwood. The camera shows Trevor making the withdrawals." My breath did that stutter thing, the body bracing for the next wave. "We can flag the account," Margot continued. "And we can file a provisional credit for elder exploitation if you'd like to make a report. But you need to know, once we start, things get noisy. Family gets noisy." I took a slow breath and thought about the girl at the checkout and the way Trevor's hand had pressed into my shoulder. "Let's make noise," I said. The noise started with Claire arriving at my apartment that evening holding a Tupperware of quinoa salad like a peace offering. "Mom," she said, placing the container on the counter and surveying the room as if I might have added hazards since she was here last. "You can't keep resisting. It's not fair to us. Trevor's spent hours assembling your wellness plan. We're protecting your future." She slid a new document toward me, limited financial power of attorney. "It just formalizes what's already happening," she said. "It'll help with the Social Security stuff." I looked at her hands, the same hands I had bandaged when she fell off her bike at 7. "What Social Security stuff?" She blinked like a deer in high beams. "The representative payee application? Trevor filed it so your checks go into a managed account. You can't keep track anymore, Mom. You've been forgetting things." I felt the words burden and forgetting coil together like a rope tightening around my ribs. In our town, people are gentle when they gossip. They soften cruelty with advice. At the church pantry where I volunteer on Tuesdays, Mrs. Patel took my elbow. "We heard Trevor is your caregiver now. How wonderful," she said. "Support is so important at your age." She glanced at my hands, checking for tremor. "On Thursday at the clinic, a nurse, I lowered her voice. Your son-in-law called about your meds. He's very involved. You're lucky." Each kindness tucked a pebble in my pocket. The rule of the world, as my late husband used to say when he read the union bylaws, is this: authority comes with paperwork and paperwork comes with dates. On Friday, The mail brought a certified letter from Social Security inviting me to an interview about appointing a representative payee to protect your interests. The envelope had Trevor's return address typed faintly below mine, as if the printer remembered him. 30 minutes later, a packet slid through my mail slot from Kindroot Wellness. Welcome to our premier concierge plan. The letter congratulated me on investing in a monthly protocol for golden years optimization. The shipping address in the corner wasn't mine. I spread everything on the kitchen table, statements, letters, the highlighted receipt, the security still, and it felt like the desk I'd kept for 3 decades at the hospital, claim folders piled, a story written in numbers. Then my phone rang. Aunt Nora? It was Julia, my sister Ruth's quiet daughter. She speaks like she's always afraid of taking up too much air. Do you have a minute? I work at the state's Medicaid Integrity Unit now. We got a cross-match today with your name and a caregiver claim. She stopped, then chose courage. It's Trevor. He enrolled as your paid caregiver last month through the Community-Based Services Program. He's billing 40 hours a week. My mouth opened and closed once. I live alone, I said. Julia exhaled. I know. I can't act on family files without a complaint. But if someone filed an audit request, her voice trailed off. I looked at the family care agreement that had been born over a coffee stain. I think I can arrange for that, I said. If you've never sat across from an elder law attorney who looks like a middle-aged camp counselor, let me tell you, it's an experience. Ms. Dunn had laugh lines and a blue cardigan and a voice like a sturdy railing. We're going to do the boring thing well, she said, sliding a legal pad toward me. Tell me everything. I told her about the grocery store, the payee appointment, the wellness plan, the security photo, the yoga studio ATM. I slid the fake care agreement across the table. She read the clause with the wellness partners and frowned. Forgery or signature by deception, she said. Either way, invalid if we can prove you lacked full information. We'll revoke any prior powers of attorney in writing today, file it with your bank, and lodge a fraud alert with Social Security. And about the caregiver program, she tapped her pen. If he's billing and not providing care, that's fraud. I felt a strange lightness fill my chest, the first drift of something like relief. We drafted a revocation of all prior authorizations and a new, very specific limited power of attorney in case I land in the hospital, naming no family members and requiring dual signatures. We opened a new account at the credit union at Margot's insistence, no online access. Come see me for everything, she said, unblinking. I went to Social Security in person with Ms. Dunn's letter in my purse and told a man in a gray tie that I did not want a representative payee and had not asked for one. He nodded gravely, stamped 3 things, and told me he'd note the file. We see this more than you'd think, he said softly. Back home, I did something that would sound petty if you've never been humiliated. I put 2 cameras in my apartment, one at the desk, one pointed at the file drawer. I set them to send footage to a cloud account Julia helped me set up with terrible patience. Then I called Trevor and told him I was overwhelmed. I'm ready to let you handle everything, I said, injecting my voice with the tiredness they love to imagine in me. I don't want to be a burden. The words tasted like rust. He exhaled with theatrical compassion. You're doing the right thing, Mom. Let the experts handle it. One thing, I added, trying to keep my tone apologetic. Could you stop by on Tuesday while I'm at my blood pressure clinic and grab my file box? It's too heavy. His yes came too quickly. Small victories arrived in the mail like birds. The credit union reversed 2 Kindroot charges pending investigation. The pension administrator confirmed in writing that no one but me could change my survivor annuity and that my beneficiary designations for the small life insurance policy were still mine to decide. We added a transfer on death instruction to my savings account to a charitable scholarship fund I'd long imagined in Walt's name for tool trade students at the college where he'd swept floors. Meanwhile, new blows landed too. My landlord called to say Trevor had asked for keys as my authorized caregiver. The church pantry coordinator asked if I wanted to step back since it's a lot for you now. Shame is a stubborn stain. It shows up even after you've scrubbed the floor. Tuesday afternoon, the camera pinged while I sat in the clinic waiting room pretending to play a word game on my phone. The footage showed Trevor entering with his own key, walking straight to my desk, opening the drawer, and sliding out the file box. He moved quickly, with the confidence of a man who expects applause later. He left with the box under his arm. I held my phone like a small wild animal that might bolt. When I returned home, the drawer set open like a mouth mid-sentence. On my doormat, a kind route delivery notice waited, addressed to Claire. Someone had been sloppy. I printed every frame. I put them in a new folder. I added the kind route notice on top with a paperclip. I labeled it Tuesday. The next morning, Julia texted, "We got an audit assignment." Anonymous complaint flagged potential double billing. She added a second message before I could reply. Also, Kind Route Wellness has a provider ID. They billed your Medicare Advantage plan last month for nutritional consults conducted by Trevor's company. I felt the floor of my tidy kitchen tilt. He's not a clinician, I typed. Julia's reply was one word, exactly. Then two things happened at once. The first was a notice from the probate court. Trevor had petitioned for a temporary guardianship over me, alleging declining executive function. Hearing set for Monday. The second was a glossy invitation that arrived via Claire's group text, Hartwell Wellness Summit, live streamed from Eastwood Community Center. Special session on caring for aging parents. The speaker photo was Trevor, chin lifted, arms crossed, the tagline, "When love means leadership." The date? Monday afternoon. He planned to stroll from court to his hero stage. I looked at the invitation until the edges blurred. Then I called Ms. Dunn. "Let's make Monday noisy," I said. Probate court looks less like television and more like the DMV with wood paneling. The benches creak. The clock is always 5 minutes slow. Claire sat on the other side of the aisle in a cream blouse that said capable, Trevor beside her in a blue suit that said trust me. Ms. Dunn's tote bag said nothing, just sat stoutly between us. When the judge asked why they were petitioning for guardianship, Trevor spoke with the crisp tone he uses on videos. "Your Honor, Nora is lovely, but she's vulnerable. She misplaces bills. She signed up for expensive wellness subscriptions. She is easily confused by technology. We've stepped in because we love her." Claire dabbed at dry eyes. "She forgets to eat. She called me 3 times last week to ask the same question." I folded my hands in my lap and felt the bones there, steady. "Ms. Bell," the judge said, kind but brisk. "Do you believe you need a guardian?" I met his eyes. "No, Your Honor. I believe I need boundaries." I let Ms. Dunn stand. When she spoke, the room recalibrated. "Your Honor, the petitioners have filed a representative payee request with Social Security without Ms. Bell's consent. They opened a joint account online. They enrolled Ms. Bell in a wellness subscription shipped to their own address. And Mr. Hartwell registered as Ms. Bell's paid caregiver under a state program, billing 40 hours a week while simultaneously giving seminars on productivity. We have documents." She set down our file like a small, polite bomb. We walked the judge through what I had collected, the highlighted kind route charge with the shipping label to Claire's unit, Margot's affidavit about withdrawals from the Eastwood ATM with stills of Trevor at the machine, the revocation of prior authorizations we'd filed, the Social Security note that my payee status was self-managed, the camera footage of Trevor entering my apartment and leaving with my file box on the day he later claimed I lost key documents. And this was Julia's contribution, the state audit report indicating Trevor had billed caregiver hours that overlapped exactly with timestamps from his Hartwell Wellness live streams. He had literally been on camera elsewhere while also supposedly helping me bathe and cook lunch. Trevor tried to keep his smile from cracking. "Older people often misunderstand consent," he said. "We acted in her best interest." Ms. Dunn's expression didn't move. Best interest would not involve ordering luxury supplements to your own address and billing her Medicare plan for nutritional consults conducted by your LLC without clinical credentials. The judge's eyebrows climbed half an inch. "He billed Medicare?" Ms. Dunn nodded. "We've notified the plan and the State Integrity Unit. A representative is on their way if the court would like to wait." The judge didn't need to wait. "Petition denied," he said, voice flat as a gavel. And I'm issuing a protective order. No access to Ms. Bell's accounts, residence, or medical information without her express written consent. He paused, then added the words that felt like cool water on a burn. MS. Bell, you may also want to consider a civil action for conversion and fraud. Claire's face went several shades paler, a precise, delicate collapse. We left the courtroom into a hallway that smelled like old paper. That's where the second act began. Julia, small and fierce in a thrifted blazer, joined us with a clipboard. The integrity unit asked me to deliver this, she said quietly. It was a notice of immediate suspension from the caregiver program and an order to repay pending investigation. Trevor's jaw flexed. This is a misunderstanding. Julia didn't flinch. We have your timesheets, Mr. Hartwell. We also have the timestamps from your videos. She looked at me, eyes softening. There's a public session this afternoon where he's speaking? Ms. Dunn smiled slightly for the first time. We brought a projector cable. At the community center, the multipurpose room buzzed with people in branded t-shirts and lanyards, the stage set with plants and a stool for truth-telling. A banner read Hartwell Wellness Summit, caring for aging parents with clarity. I recognized faces from church, from the grocery store, from the clinic. Trevor warmed up the crowd with jokes about stubborn elders and the importance of decisive leadership. Claire worked the audience near the back, handing out pamphlets on care agreements you can trust. I sat in the second row between Margot and Mrs. Patel, my two embodiments of the town's conscience. When Trevor clicked to the slide titled Streamlining Finances, Ms. Dunn stood. Excuse me, she said, voice carrying without a mic. Before we learn about leadership, could we watch something else? She gestured to Julia, who plugged the cable into the projection laptop with calm hands that shook only when they were idle. The screen lit up with the security footage from my hallway, Trevor entering my apartment with his key, leaving with my file box during hours he had claimed to be helping me bathe. A murmur rolled through the room like a low tide. The next video showed his own live stream playing on the left and his caregiver timesheet on the right, the time blocks overlapping like two pieces that weren't meant to fit. Then we put up the KindRoot welcome letter, the shipping label to Claire's address, the Medicare claim number with the plan's logo, and finally Margot's stills from the ATM, Trevor at the machine that had siphoned cash from the joint account he'd opened with my name. For a moment the room forgot to breathe. Claire found her voice first, brittle and too bright. Mom is confused. These are out of context. There was a rustle beside me. Mrs. Patel stood, her sari's edge precise as a ledger line. Context? She said softly. Context is groceries declined while vitamins arrive at your address. Context is filing for guardianship and preaching about love in the same afternoon. She turned slightly so others could hear without needing to lean. We run the food pantry. We notice who helps and who harvests. Today we are noticing. Margot cleared her throat. I'll simply add that our credit union prohibits exploitation. We'll be closing compromised accounts. Names were not required. Everyone knew. Trevor tried to take back the stage with a laugh that had lost its teeth. This is a smear campaign. The program is broken. Anyone can misinterpret a timestamp. From the back, a voice I'd last heard whispering under a checkout's breath called out, "You told me older people click things, remember?" But she kept the receipt. The crowd pivoted toward the girl from the grocery store, her face red and steady. The real ally I hadn't known I had, standing with the certainty of a person who knows the difference between ringing up dignity and ringing up fraud. The event organizer, a man in a branded polo who recognized a reputational fire when he smelled one, reached for the mic. "We're going to pause the session," he announced. "We don't platform questionable practices." Trevor tried to speak. The mic cut. Julia handed him the integrity unit's suspension notice, like a concession he hadn't planned to make. Claire stood very straight, her shoulders set in the way mine used to be when storms rolled through. I didn't feel triumph exactly. I felt a boundary click into place like a lock finding home. Consequences don't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes they arrive in envelopes and calendar appointments. Trevor withdrew his guardianship petition before the court could schedule a contempt hearing for violating the protective order by contacting my landlord. The caregiver program issued a demand for repayment, He posted a video that evening about temporary bureaucratic misalignments, which his followers liked less than usual. Kindroot Wellness, contacted by Ms. Dunn and the Medicare plan, refunded 3 months of charges and quietly delisted their Premier Concierge offering. The credit union closed the joint account and reissued my cards. Social Security flagged my record for no third-party access absent in-person confirmation. A detective from the County Financial Crimes Unit asked me, very politely, if I wanted to pursue charges. I asked for a week to think. At home, I made soup. That's how dignity tastes when your appetite returns, like carrots softened exactly right, like onions sweating in butter without burning, like a recipe you can make without thinking because you taught yourself to feed people long ago. Ben came over with a backpack and a question for every pot lid. Why did Mom say you were confused? He asked, careful like children are when they sense the ground under them might be learning to hold. Sometimes, I said, stirring the broth, people call you weak when you stop making their lives easier. He nodded as if I had told him a scientific fact he planned to check later. We did his math homework at the kitchen table under the same lamp where I had spread out all the papers that first night. When he finished, he looked up shyly. Dad says you're good with numbers. I smiled. I used to be, I said. I am again. I didn't sue Claire. Maybe that disappoints some of you who like clean endings. I did something quieter. With Ms. Dunn's help, I drew up a family boundary letter and had it notarized and delivered to both of them. I stated that all financial involvement with me was over, that any contact about my health or money must go through my attorney, that if either attempted to represent me to institutions, I would file charges. I made a donation with the refunded Kindroot money to the community college in Walt's name and set up the scholarship we'd talked about over countless dinners we thought we'd have forever. I started volunteering on Wednesdays at the credit union's financial literacy class for seniors, where I teach people how to read their statements like diaries and to love their own signatures enough to protect them. I also signed the form to become a court watcher with Julia's unit, sitting quietly in the back to remind judges there are pairs of patient eyes on the system. Claire sent an apology text that wasn't one. We just wanted to help, it said. You've always been so proud. The last time, I would have tried to find the kindest translation. This time, I put the phone down and watched the late sun catch the second hand of the clock Walt repaired the year Ben was born. The tick felt crisp, honest. I owe you the last twist, the one no one saw coming. I accepted the title I'd spent my life avoiding. I told Ben plainly, you can lean on me. Then, slowly, to the mirror, and I can lean on others when I choose, not when I'm coerced. It's a strange kind of freedom, reclaiming the word burden and setting it in a place that serves you. Because here's the truth I learned in the ugliest aisle of the grocery store. If you make yourself small to fit someone's plan for you, they will keep shrinking you until you disappear. This is not a lecture. It's a ledger. On one side, humiliation in front of neighbors, a forged agreement, a son-in-law who believes control is love, a daughter who thinks compliance is kindness. On the other, a cashier with a highlighter, a teller with a policy, a niece with a spine, a concierge with a flash drive, an attorney with a cardigan, a judge with a clock that runs a little slow and a sense of what that means. In the middle is me, a woman whose knees still tremble when the room goes quiet and who knows, finally, that trembling is not the same as weakness. I don't know what Trevor will tell his followers next. I don't know when Claire will understand the difference between leading and managing. I do know the scholarship fund got its first thank you letter from a student named Marco who wants to learn precision machining because his grandfather taught him how to listen to a broken gear. I do know that the pantry on Tuesdays now stocks denture cream because Mrs. Patel read my face without making me say it. I do know that when I walk into the credit union, Margot greets me like a colleague, not a patient, and hands me a cup of coffee that never spills on the forms. And I know that somewhere in this town, on a sidewalk where leaves skitter in a wind that can cut if you don't dress for it, a boy is walking home from school with a backpack that clinks softly because his grandmother tucked a jar of coins inside. Coins that used to sit in a dish by a man who kept time for other people and left me just enough of it to do what needed doing. If you're still listening, here's the last image I want to leave with you. Ben asleep on my couch, one hand on his math book, the other curled under his cheek, the event wristband from that ridiculous summit still on his wrist because he forgot to cut it off. I sit beside him with the scissors, and I think, no, let it remind us both. Not of them, but of the day a room full of people learned the sound of a boundary closing. Then I set the scissors down and let the second hand mark its clean, relentless circles, trusting that tomorrow will come on time.